everyone. I'm going to talk to you about data sovereignty, particularly as concerns telemetrics or telemetry. And the needs to secure these systems. So Eric Leblond, co-founder of Stamus Networks. I've been doing this for 20 years, primarily as a developer on open source. And I've worked for some startups. And I worked on Suricata, the EDS, and threat analysis. I'm also a member of OISF, and I've also worked on the Linux firewall, and I recently co-wrote the Security Analyst Guide to Suricata that explains what you can do with network telemetry. So what is telemetry for security? Well, it's the collection of events on the network coming from various sensors. And so we can retrieve this from an operations center and then analyze it. So it's a very broad range of events, might be concerns from physical events or network events. So I'm going to particularly talk about two aspects as concerns security, coming from the EDR and NDR. So as I was saying, there are a wide range of events that can be detected. So where you might see everything coming through the different sensors. But then the problem is you might see too many events. This is one problem to be resolved. And then, the idea is to identify the events that should be logged and analyze them. So you can either have a human selection or an algorithmic type of selection, and perhaps using AI as well to particularly target which types of events you want to analyze. On the endpoint, so where you're collecting the data through the different agents, so you've either got agents attached to, so when you've got an agent running, you can gather, file access events, network connections, and you will get the data coming from that, and a wide range of data. There's the local view, for example. Let's look at the classic simple example here. So the Sysmon from Microsoft, you can export the information here. You've got the systems, the files that have been accessed. That's the type of information you can gather. Then on the network side, you can get something similar, looking at the IP connections and also what was the process involved, the source of the data. And we've got the IP identification as well. So with endpoint telemetry, it's going to depend on the installed system. So the agent can access the network memory and the files. And so there are certain risks to this. Because if you can extract a file, it means that you can also extract intellectual property or other trade secrets. So you can also access memory, including the passwords. So if you MMI, the Mimikatz, for example, these are the types of things that can happen with those tools. So there's some critical information on the business side and security side. So you have to be aware of what's going through your telemetry system on the network. So here, there's no agent, but there are traffic capture systems, and you can extract information there depending on, well, looking at the flows. So for clear traffic, so for example, SMTP, so any unencrypted email exchanges, some critical information might be exposed, or if there's data encryption, some of the information might be circulating unencrypted. So you have to be very careful about the definition of protection of personal data as well. In France, the CNIL has its own views on what is considered personal information. So encrypted traffic, you will still have some critical elements and negotiated elements. So the TLS negotiation, you've got you're using TLS to connect to the host. All of this can, you might not know the URL, but there's information circulating. And then you've got, the data volume, the packets, etc. And so it can allow you to develop some statistics and verifications thanks to telemetry. So on clear text, well, this isn't very clear to read on the screen, but here, this is an event, an EDS event, where you've got the logging of the payload and the protocol, so you've got good visibility on everything that went through the network. So a list of processes that were exfiltrated by malware. So you've got this internal information that's being exfiltrated. For the encrypted data, you can see TLS type info, there's the server, and the payload. So you can really only see certain aspects of the information. So we're seeing a trend of, the connection between telemetry and the cloud, so the SaaS, because this is convenient, first of all. When you talk about telemetry, you're talking about volumes of data. And you never really know exactly how much. It depends on the flows, and it can evolve over time. And so people tend to be looking for SaaS or the cloud to manage those systems. So for publishers, well, this can represent some interesting revenue. So that's always interesting, of course, for managers of businesses. So what about storage? Well, here, publishers are talk about retrieving data and then exploiting it, depends on the model. And what we can see happening, in fact, is that, well, it is convenient to have immediate access to the data because other methods can slow the access. So, when the information is available via their own cloud storage, it's easy. You can change your algorithm yourself rather than having a third party do this. So this is why we will start seeing more telemetry in the cloud. It's more convenient. So let's look at data residency in the physical sense of the term, and then the notion of sovereignty. Under which jurisdiction do we fall? Because they can be quite different. In fact, some laws are extraterritorial. So the data might be stored in a country outside of the country where the client is physically based. If we look at the United States situation, so following the 9/11, the Patriot Act, it can mean this, if you will, providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism. The Americans are very good at inventing those types of acronyms. So the idea was to give the United States government and its agencies to have access to data if the company has access to data under American law. So hosting, so for example, if an American company is hosting data in Europe, the FBI can demand to have access to that data. Now, the reverse is also true. There's the Cloud Acts clarifying lawful overseas use of data. This is the opposite going on. So an American company can use the personal data of foreigners. So they're saying that American law basically applies everywhere and European law does not. So you do need to keep this into mind. Who is your service provider? What is the origin of that company? So you can see that if they fall under American law, you need to know this. So meanwhile, in the EU, well, there was, of course, a lot of effort put into preventing this type of movement, coming from the Americans. So if you a lot of the GDPR was focused on, well, stopping cookies. Well, the idea was also to protect personal data. So the idea here was to ensure a healthier environment for Europe compared to what's going on in the US. Then we have other directives, NIS2, DORA, and CRA in Europe, which are not so much referring to the storage of information, but rather to the safety, the security of the information. The idea here being to raise the requirements of providers and strengthening cyber security. So we're not so much on a question of sovereignty here, but on trust. By improving the level of cybersecurity, it is meant to improve trust as compared to the earlier environment. So after this one, so we have all those European directives and regulations, with the idea being to strengthen controls at many levels concerning personal data, but also on the flow of data through telemetry. And it requires businesses to organize sovereignty and security of information.
This is why we tons of announcements were made by cloud providers, and they announced that they had created sovereign clouds, which are in line with digital giants, and basically Google and the consorts have tried to get out of legal legislation, regulations when it comes to data sovereignty. We tend to be a bit hypocritical because China is a main stakeholder in this industry, and at the Chinese level, we have very interesting things like to open any account, you need to prove your identity. So there's nothing anonymous like in Europe, and all data concerning Chinese people should be collected and kept in China. And so there's a very strong connection between the Chinese government and companies. And it's very hard to know who accesses the data that are hosted in China, not many security companies are worldwide known, but officially our data is not used in China, even if they are trying very hard for this to happen. Now, when we look at the issue of data sovereignty, it's a bit complicated because we have more and more laws, frameworks that are in progress, and so it's not very clear to know what can be done, and it takes time, and this should be compared with the operational constraints because there are a number of operational challenges like infrastructure costs, the need to recover data extremely fast, and there's a need to work efficiently while preserving data sovereignty. And it is a complicated process that requires some thought. And the first thing is to look at the data generated by solutions. So look at the various solutions and see what data is generated and evaluate the things that are required to host this data. So we have data that might be critical or confidential, and it all depends on what you agree to expose. And the question is whether you can provide a particular type of data to a third party, knowing that that third party may actually pass them along to someone else. So the transmission of telemetry data, is it exposed to an adequate level of protection? Is the transmission properly encrypted? Is there sensitive data, and is it anonymous? And when it comes to telemetry, who controls accesses? Which authorities can require access? Like the FBI may prevent in the USA the collection of data on a system because the connection with terrorism is not clear when it comes to regulations. So, and finally, we need to know about safety. The security of data. Is the database encrypted in case of a malicious and access? Is it encrypted? So if we look at the various deployment approaches, well, with SaaS for a company, it's super easy to deploy, particularly to transfer information. If it's SaaS, the company or the editor will be able to update algorithms and systems, and it's really interesting at this very level. However, there's no control over data residency, and there is little control over security. Now, on the public cloud, which means the data is hosted in the cloud, then you need to take into account the fact that you have public cloud hosting, and therefore there's little control over security. For private cloud, well, it may be expensive, and when you're on premise, on site, there might be we have full control when it comes to data access, but telemetry might be an issue. So now, when it comes to cloud hosting, there's the SecNum Cloud certification that was set up by the French government, and it aims at solving the problem of cloud security at several levels. First of all, at the technical level, we have watertight information systems. At the operational level, well, you have qualified and selected people who are working on the resources, and at the legal level, an exclusive application of European law, which it guarantees data sovereignty. So this system, which was developed jointly with the European Cybersecurity Certification Scheme for Cloud Services, will solve most sovereignty issues as far as data is concerned. So it is very interesting because you can export your telemetrics there because there are security guarantees. Now, when it comes to strategies and when it comes to deploying telemetry, it's very important to assess the content of the telemetry data. If you've got information with IP addresses and packages, well, this is very different than exporting a whole traffic content or files. So it's very important to assess what is actually transferred to know what approach to adopt. And then you need to determine the standards and the current regulations when it comes to data sovereignty. And once these two steps have been done, select the best approach as AAS or public cloud or private cloud or on-site in order to use the solution that best meets your needs. Now, typically, when we look at the data produced and what is used with different tools, we have critical data when it comes to security telemetrics, and our advice is to pay attention to data sovereignty and ensure data sovereignty while minimizing the potential impact the expectation of data towards another state could represent. So as I was saying, I am one of the co-founders of Stamus Networks, and what we provide is that we help organizations around the world to secure their networks with responses. So we have a partnership with NATO, and we carry out 2 operations a year, and it's very interesting. And we also work with OISF and Suricata. We actually sell the Stamus security platform, and we work with strong, what am I saying? We work with a solution that is as open as possible. So we have loads of visibility, and we try to offer services that work efficiently, whatever deployment conditions are, with or without a potential data exploitation. So we actually collect information and detection updates from the outside, and we work on disconnected systems, which means that we don't have any issues concerning data exploitation. Now, our telemetric data is interoperable and can be stored on clouds. So if you are a client of ours and willing to export your telemetrics, we do have tools available for this. So with Stamus networks, various deployments are possible because the manager can be on-site or in the cloud. And you connect a number of sensors, depending on your infrastructure, that can be deployed in the cloud, on-site, or distantly, remotely, in various formats, virtual machines or physical machines that report to other solutions like an XDR. So I thank you very much for your attention. Do you have any